A funeral dress with a skirt that's too revealing makes me angry. It seems like you're trying to attract men by wearing it. I'm tired of my husband's unfair thoughts. I want a divorce. I'm leaving this house. My name is Kate, and I'm 40 years old. I love chocolate a lot and often end up eating a whole family-sized bar by myself without realizing it. I used to fight with my sister over chocolate when we were younger. Looking back, I wasn't always a mature big sister, but I've seen adults who act even less mature than I did when I was 25. Back then, I had just married my husband, Kevin, who worked at a bank. We met through a friend and got married after about 6 months of dating. Everyone thought I had a perfect life. But things changed after we got married. Every day, when Kevin came home from work, I would greet him and ask about dinner. If it wasn't ready, he'd get upset. So, I made sure to come home before him, cook dinner, and clean up. It was a bit annoying, but Kevin's good salary allowed us to live in a nice house and have a comfortable life. I thought it was normal to have little arguments in a marriage, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But Kevin's behavior kept getting worse. Despite being married, I still visited my parents often, especially to see my 14-year-old sister who was much younger than me. Since our parents worked a lot, I felt like I raised her most of the time. It wasn't because my parents ignored her, but because I loved her so much and wanted to take care of her. My sister was often sick and had to stay in the hospital. Sometimes the doctors would say she might not make it through the night. Thinking about losing her made me love her even more. That's why even after I got married, I continued to visit my sister when she was out of school. But my husband didn't like it. He would say things like, "Who is more important, me or your sister?" When a woman gets married, she should focus on her husband's family. My mother never acted like this. "You're not doing your duty as a wife." He'd go on like this for almost an hour. None of my friends were married at the time, so when I talked to a senior coworker about my husband, she said, "It's your responsibility. When you're married, you have to prioritize your husband." I thought that's how it was supposed to be. Looking back, I realized I was naive. But even then, I couldn't imagine not seeing my sister. My sister's health was getting worse, and she was in the hospital again, only allowed short visits in a sterile room. It's natural for a family to want to be together in times like these. Sometimes, I'd even take a day off from work to go see her, and I started going to the hospital even on days when my husband was off. But my husband strongly disagreed with this. One day, out of the blue, he invited his mother, my mother-in-law, over to our house. With her there, he confronted me. "What are you even thinking? I work hard to take care of our home, and you can't even do that properly. You're just hopeless. I've told you so many times not to wear skirts, yet you still do. It's inappropriate for a married woman to wear a skirt. What's the problem with me wearing the clothes I like? And this dress was chosen by my sister. I can't just give up on it." See, there you go again. Always bringing up your sister, Kate. You should be caring more about me. After all, who do you think supports you? Hey, I work too. You can't just claim you're the only one providing. This argument isn't getting us anywhere. Listen, I've already called your workplace and told them you're quitting. You should be thankful. From now on, your focus will be on taking care of the house. What are you talking about? You can't make decisions like this without asking me first. I'm not going to listen to you. Starting today, you're going to live with my mom. Maybe then you'll learn how to be a proper wife. I don't understand what's gotten into you. You're acting irrationally. Shut up. The angry husband smashed a glass on the floor and continued to throw things around in his rage. Seeing the broken glass made me truly scared of my husband for the first time. I regretted marrying him, wondering how I ended up with someone like him. Later, I tried to cancel my resignation with my company, but they told me not to cause any trouble. It turned out my husband had demanded my resignation in a way that was almost abusive, so I lost my job and had to stay at home as my husband wanted. When I told him I quit my job as he wished, he apologized with a smile, saying he might have gone too far. But after seeing his true nature, I couldn't trust his apology. The next day, my husband surprised me by bringing home a group of his coworkers. He proudly introduced me, saying, I wanted to show off my lovely wife. And his colleagues joined in, praising my appearance. Then, out of the blue, he declared, My wife is an amazing cook. You have to taste her food before you leave. I panicked, realizing we didn't have enough food for everyone. It's fine, just make something simple. I don't want you to stress out, he reassured me. I can go shopping if we need more ingredients, one of his female coworkers offered. Your husband really cares about you. I'm jealous, he added. No. He's just good at putting on a show. If he really cared, he wouldn't have brought his coworkers home after a big fight yesterday. I thought bitterly to myself as I started cooking with my mother-in-law. After about 3 hours of eating and drinking, his coworkers finally left. Hi, you. What? I instinctively replied, feeling nervous about what might happen next, given his grumpy mood. I was anxious, afraid he might explode like the day before. Can't you be a bit happier? Seems like I'm not teaching my wife properly, he criticized. I couldn't understand what I did wrong, but I didn't dare to argue. I was too scared. I'm sorry, I mumbled, feeling defeated. Even a child can apologize, he scoffed. Mom, give her a score for today. He turned to his mother for backup. Well, she's not doing a good job supporting her husband, is she? I can't give her any score, his mother replied. Haha, see, even my mom agrees. She can't even give you a score. How funny is that? My husband laughed and lightly tapped me, and about the meal, I tasted a bit. But didn't Kevin find it unsatisfactory? He continued. That's right, Mom. Keep it coming. And what about her clothes? There were men among the colleagues, but she's showing too much skin. What do you think? As a woman, it's indecent to expose your collarbone. She should cover it with a scarf or turtleneck, he added. Whose fault is it that his colleagues suddenly invaded our house and I had to cook without even having time to change my clothes? I retorted. It's Kevin's, I concluded. I couldn't understand why I was constantly being criticized so harshly. She really is something, isn't she? Despite my efforts to teach her every day, she just doesn't seem to learn. Maybe she's just not very smart, my husband remarked. No doubt about it, his mother agreed. That day, I endured a lecture for nearly 2 hours. By the time I finally got a chance to take a bath and go to sleep, it was almost 4 a.m. I had to wake up soon to prepare my husband's lunchbox, so I decided to skip sleep altogether. Despite everything, my husband continued to try to teach me a lesson, especially when I kept visiting my younger sister. About a month and a half later, I received the heartbreaking news of my sister's passing. I wished it was a lie, I murmured, desperately hoping that my mother's announcement of my sister's passing was just a cruel joke. I had been warned countless times about my sister's critical condition, and I had even shared what I thought would be my last moments with her. I thought I was prepared, but my heart couldn't accept the reality. She was only 14 years old. I questioned whether my sister, who endured painful treatments and constant hospital stays, had truly found happiness in her life. As her older sister, had I been able to bring her joy? However, the last expression I saw on her face in the hospital was a smile. It seemed she hadn't suffered. You fought bravely and you did your best. Thank you for everything, I whispered through tears as I hugged my sister and bid her a final farewell. The funeral passed in a blur, and I realized I hadn't been home for several days. I informed my husband about my sister's passing, but as expected, he didn't bother to attend the funeral. Instead, he said something hurtful like, "You should prioritize me over the dead." Unable to bear such cruel words at such a time of grief, I ignored him and hung up the phone. When I finally returned home, weighed down by sorrow, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me at the door, looking stern and unwelcoming. You're quite late, aren't you? My husband remarked. A family member has passed away. I couldn't just come back in a few hours. How can you accuse me of lying so easily? I replied, feeling hurt and frustrated. What? Are you going through a rebellious phase? Always lying and defying me. Whose wife do you think you are? He retorted. Wait a minute, my sister really did die. It's not a lie, I insisted. I wonder. Even though you haven't greeted me at the door in days, even if you're wearing a skirted suit now, it's hard to believe you, he replied dismissively. Why is it hard to believe? I asked, confused and upset. If you truly love your husband, you should be able to do it. It's your duty as a wife to welcome your husband home. My husband scolded me, accusing me of being incompetent, and don't even think about denying it. Are you having an affair? What? No matter how many times I tell you, he dressed provocatively, and the other day you were flirting with my colleague. You're just interested in other men, aren't you? What a disgraceful woman, he continued, hurling hurtful accusations at me. What the heck? I started to argue back, fueled by anger and forgetting my fear of my husband. But then it happened. Divorce, huh? Fine by me. Someone as frivolous as Kate isn't fit for Kevin, right? My mother-in-law chimed in. My husband mumbled, trying to stop her, but I seized the opportunity. I agree with Mom. Let's get a divorce, I declared firmly. My husband kept pleading with me to reconsider, but I had made up my mind. I couldn't risk staying with him any longer, afraid that his violence might escalate. This was my chance, and I was certain it was the right time to end our marriage. So I quickly packed my things and left the house. My husband kept insisting, "If you apologize, I'll forgive you." But I ignored him, thinking he must be delusional. He persisted until the end, grabbing my arm tightly and saying, "Wait." But I reacted instinctively, hitting him in the face with my bag and running away. I headed straight for a specific place, a room in an apartment that I had prepared just in case something like this happened. As soon as I entered the room, I received a call from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. "Hello. Kate, did you arrive safely?" she asked concernedly. "Yes, I'm fine. I'm in a taxi, so Kevin won't find out," I reassured her. "That's good. Make sure to hire a lawyer and proceed with the divorce quickly," she advised. "Yes, I can't wait to start living independently," I replied. In reality, my mother-in-law and I had been pretending to be at odds in front of my husband. It all began the day my husband brought a colleague home. After his lecture ended and my husband fell asleep, my mother-in-law approached me. "Leave this house. Get away from my son," she urged me. Each time my husband criticized me, my mother-in-law, who seemed to have her suspicions, would ask, "Really?" It turned out her late husband had been very much like my husband, and she had endured a lot in her own marriage. In her generation, divorce was frowned upon, so she couldn't end her own marriage. But it seems she wanted something better for me. Watching the interactions between my husband and me, she must have felt compelled to help me. That's when my mother-in-law, with the help of a friend, found a safe place for me to live alone. It's hard to believe she's related to my husband. I can't thank her enough for her kindness. After living in the apartment she arranged for me for 2 weeks, my mother-in-law finally visited, pulling along a suitcase. "Welcome. I'm looking forward to this new chapter," she greeted me warmly. Living with us, my mother-in-law discovered that her own son had changed. Before, he seemed like a good person, the image he presented to his colleagues. My mother-in-law blamed herself, believing that his behavior was influenced by his father's genes or things he witnessed during his childhood. For me, regardless of the reasons behind his behavior, I believe the real issue lies in his inability as an adult to control his emotions. So, I don't hold my mother-in-law responsible. My husband now takes good care of my mother-in-law, but only because he thinks she's on his side. I fear what he might do if he discovers she's been helping me with the divorce. That's why I suggested she come live with me for a while when she prepared this house. At first, she hesitated, worrying that once my husband and I divorce, she'd become a stranger to me, but I assured her, saying, "After everything you've done for me, there's no daughter-in-law distinction. You're like my mother or my sister. That's how I see you." On the way back from my sister's funeral, my mother-in-law steered the conversation toward divorce, intentionally supporting me. Recognizing her intentions, I quickly agreed to the divorce. I thought it would take more time and preparation to leave my husband, but thanks to my mother-in-law's help, that time came sooner than expected. I have nothing but gratitude for her. Finally, the divorce was officially settled through the lawyer. 4 days later, as I returned to the apartment, I was startled to find my ex-husband waiting for me outside. "I found you. You're trying to trick me," he accused loudly. Does he know about what happened? I wondered silently, trying to remain composed. "What do you want now?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "It's your fault that the credit card and bank account balances have decreased," he blamed me. "What are you talking about?" "I don't understand," I replied, feigning innocence. In truth, before the divorce, I was using my husband's credit card to gradually buy furniture for this house. I also quietly withdrew money from the bank account. It was all part of my plan, I confessed. When I discussed this with my mother-in-law, she encouraged me to go ahead with it, so I emptied the account without any hesitation. The reason why my unemployed mother-in-law and I can live comfortably, enjoying tea parties every night, is because of this money. That's my money. "You can't just do whatever you want without facing the consequences," he shouted angrily. "Remember the money we have? It's from the credit card we got after we got married and the money we saved together. Since we're married, it's both of ours," I explained, smiling at him. Suddenly, my mother-in-law returns from shopping and says, "Oh, you found out, didn't you?" Surprised, my ex-husband stands speechless behind me. "Hey, you're back." I greet my mother-in-law, trying to keep things normal. "What? Why is Mom here?" my husband asks, confused. "Well, because we're living together," I respond, with my husband still puzzled and my mother-in-law acting like it's no big deal. "So, you lied about going back to your parents' house, and why are you living with Kate, not me?" he questions. "I'm lost," Kevin admits. "Well, I've lost hope in you, Kevin," his mother replies. "What? But I'm the one who helped Kate get away," Kevin protests. "Actually, Kevin, Kate and I had already planned to split up before you even knew about it," his mother reveals. "But Mom, you were saying terrible things about Kate." "Yes. Well, when I was criticizing her, I was really imagining you in her place," his mother confesses. "What do you mean?" Kevin asks, confused. "Because you're not the sharpest tool in the shed, and you get all worked up over silly things like a woman showing her collarbone. I was worried Kate would be in trouble. She deserved someone better than you for a husband," Kevin's mother bluntly tells him. Kevin is taken aback by his mother's harsh words. Meanwhile, I find her response so unexpectedly funny that I burst into laughter. "Mom, you do realize I'm your son, don't you?" Kevin asks, trying to make sense of it. "Unfortunately, yes." "I guess I should have raised you differently," his mother responds dryly. I can't help it, and my laughter grows even louder. "You're just a chip off the old block, like your dad." Watching you mistreat Kate reminded me of my own past. I worried that if she left you, you'd come crawling back to me. I couldn't take that chance. So I left you and moved in with Kate, for both our sakes, Kevin's mother explains. Kevin's mother's confession brings tears to his eyes. He finally explodes. "Is it my fault?" "Why? You're my child. You've been neglecting me." His mother laughs, almost incredulously. "Do I still need to mother a grown man who's almost 30, she scoffs. A few neighbors gathered as our argument escalated in the yard. They chuckled at my ex-husband's dramatic outburst, saying, "He's really making a scene." With people watching, he didn't dare lay a hand on us and retreated to his house. But the next day, he seemed to have completely lost it. He started spreading rumors about us to his friends and co-workers who used to hang out at our place. "My ex may seem nice, but she ignores her husband," he complained to anyone who would listen. One woman at his office fired back. "You know, your behavior is exactly why women are wary of their husbands. It's becoming a societal problem." Although no one openly agreed, the vibe at work made it clear that Kevin was in the wrong, and he felt increasingly isolated. In the end, my ex-husband, who turned out to be quite sensitive, couldn't handle the judgmental stares and whispers anymore. He quickly quit his job. It's ironic how he was so quick to criticize me but couldn't handle criticism himself. How sad. Feeling alone, he sent me a lengthy letter trying to justify his behavior and boasting about his greatness as a man. The letter was a whopping 10 pages long. I was surprised when I received the thick envelope. I had blocked his texts, but if he could write this much by hand, I can only imagine how many texts he would have sent. His final line was, "If you ever miss me, feel free to contact me." So I playfully replied, "Then please go ahead with the property division." That sparked another big argument. I used to be afraid when we lived together, but not anymore. I stood my ground with my lawyer. Even before his mother suggested I leave, I had secretly been recording his behavior at home, preparing for a divorce. All those months enduring his hurtful words paid off. With the evidence, I successfully sorted out the property division. After that, I moved out from living with my ex-mother-in-law when I found a new job. It was still close enough for a reasonable commute. Surprisingly, she had found herself a boyfriend. It turned out the person who introduced us to the apartment was her new beau. She left with him, holding hands, and said, "Come visit us once we're settled." I must admit, my ex-mother-in-law really surprised me. She's a fantastic woman, and it's clear why she's so well liked, regardless of her age. As for me, I spent my best years focused on work after changing careers, thinking I might have missed my chance for remarriage. However, I started joining regular online gatherings with my colleagues. This gave me more opportunities to casually exchange contact info with people I didn't usually talk to, including a director from another department who showed interest in me. At first, I kept my distance because we worked for the same company. But as we began having private online chats about things we couldn't discuss at work, we grew closer and eventually started dating. The head of the department, who hadn't been in a relationship for years since his last girlfriend left him because of his workaholic tendencies, treated me with caution, saying, "I don't want to repeat the same mistake." And happily, we decided to tie the knot next year. I was concerned that his parents might not approve of me, considering I've been divorced before and he's getting married for the first time. However, I'm relieved to see his parents are accepting and even grateful, saying, "Thank you for being with our son." When I shared the news of my upcoming marriage with my ex-mother-in-law, she was genuinely happy for me. Oh, and about my ex-husband. It seems he found a job at a different bank and got remarried. But knowing his personality, it's likely he's been divorced again. That makes it 3 divorces now. He works at a bank and initially comes off as charming, but he tends to blame his ex-wives for the divorces, which makes it seem like women fall for him. Even when my ex-mother-in-law tries to warn women about his true nature at wedding receptions, he manages to manipulate them skillfully. Well, after 3 divorces, it's likely he'll start being avoided by women. I just hope there won't be any more victims. With the way he's going, he probably won't have a good ending because he's likely disliked by many women. But honestly, it's not my concern anymore.